everybody, today I'm going to review the gray Pneumatic 3/8 inch drive mid-length metric impact socket set. Now this does come in a blow mold case, and the best part about it, it doesn't skip any sizes. So going from 7mm all the way up to 19mm, none are missing, and no matter what size you need, it's going to be in here. Now what I want to point out, mid-length sockets are a relatively new idea. Typically you would just have shallow and then deep well. This is going to meet in that halfway point, which is why they do call it a mid-length, and it really excels in many situations where clearance is an issue. Now if you think about it, sometimes with the shallow it's just not enough, but the deep well is just too long to fit. Something like this is going to get in there and get the job done, and you're not going to have to rig something up with adapters and extensions to get in at the correct angle that you need to. Now what I want to do in this video is really give you some closer-up views at these. We're going to take a look at the case as well as how they line up to other sockets so you can see how they really compare. The set does come in this very nice heavy-duty blow mold case, and it's actually a two-piece design that has a hinge connecting the two. Now I want to point out, with a typical style, you'll see a thin piece of plastic, and it would be a one-piece design that folds over, and eventually that wears out and will break in half. Because this is a two-piece design, it's really going to last you a lot longer. Now in addition to the sizes being marked on each individual socket, they're also embossed in the plastic. So let's say you have a couple of them out, the 10 and 11mm. You can take a quick glance at what the size of the socket is, match that up with the embossed sizing on the plastic, and you're going to be able to put it back in the correct spot the first try. The other thing to keep in mind with the size of the carrying case, it's very manageable, and you can carry a cordless impact as well as all the sockets in just one hand. So let's say you want to make a quick trip to the junkyard to get whatever part you need. You can carry these in one hand, and with your free hand you can still carry the parts out. So what we'll do is just go ahead, pop the case open, pick whatever socket that we need, put it on the impact, and then we can go ahead and remove the part we're looking for. To give you a side-by-side size comparison between a shallow socket, the mid-length socket, and then a deep well socket, all three of these are 19mm, all three are 3/8 inch drive, and they're all impact sockets. And you can see that the mid-length is roughly 1.5 times as long as the shallow socket, and then roughly 2/3 as long as the deep well. So if the deep well just will not fit because of clearance issues, and then the shallow will not fit because you need just that little bit of extra, that's where the mid-length is going to be able to get in there and get the job done, where neither one of these would be able to work for you. One additional thing that you need to consider when you're looking at these is the broach depth, and that means how far you can actually slide a fastener down inside of them before it's going to bottom out and you can't go any further. Now what you also want to keep in mind is the fact that with a shallow socket, you can see the square drive right there. That's where the end of the impact wrench is going to plug in. It's going to come up to the end of that, and really at the bottom of the flats right here is the absolute furthest a fastener or even a stud sticking out the side of an engine is going to be able to slide in there. Now the mid-length does have a similar broach depth, but you can see a hollow portion underneath of it before the square drive starts. So if you're slipping this over an exhaust stud or maybe an intake manifold stud, you can still slide that over top of it. The actual stud can extend down inside of there, and then the nut is going to be able to spin around the flats. Now the deepest broach, of course, is going to be the deep well. You can see how far that goes down in there, and it's much further than the mid-length. But the problem with something like this, because of the length of the actual socket, many times that prevents you from actually putting it on a fastener and removing it simply because it will not fit. As far as a negative that I think people may not like is the fact that this does have two individual size markings, one on both sides of the socket. They're both laser engraved, however it does not have the actual size stamped in the metal. If that ever was rubbing against metal when you were removing something and eventually it wore off, you would not be able to easily see what size the socket was. And to show you what I mean by that, here's another 19mm socket. This happens to be a swivel one. You can see it also has laser markings. But on the top, the size is going to be still embossed in the metal. So if these eventually wear off, you could still easily see what size it was, where the mid-length socket just does not have that option. A really important feature of any socket, especially an impact socket, is going to be the retention. And what I mean by that, the square opening in the bottom that plugs on the anvil or the drive end needs to be correctly sized so you don't have a problem putting it on or removing it too easily. Now, if this hole is too big, that's very dangerous, especially with an impact wrench. If this is free spinning, let's say you remove a bolt, and the socket retention does not hold this in place, it can go flying across the shop and hurt somebody or break a window out. So what we'll do is try the 17mm with the impact wrench as well as the air ratchet. Now we'll line the anvil up with the opening on the bottom, slide it into place, and it's going to click right in. Now the movement that you see is actually the anvil going in and out of the housing. It's not the socket moving back and forth on the anvil. If I want to remove it, I'll grab onto it, pull it off, and it does have resistance, which is exactly what we're looking for. When it gets all the way to the end, we'll pop it completely off. Now taking a look at the air ratchet, it's a little bit different because this does have a ball detent that you need to line up with the hole in the side. So taking that same socket, we'll line it up with the ball, lock it into place, and then you could use this either as an air ratchet or as a standard ratchet to break the fastener free. When you're done, grab onto the socket and it's going to pop off exactly the same way. Lastly, you do want to take into account torque as well as torque loss. Now, I made a video specifically about this, explaining how it works and what kind of results you expect to see. But to get maximum power out of any impact, you want to use it solely with the socket. When we used the standard extension along with the socket, we had a 10% drop in power loss. And when we used a swivel impact universal joint along with the socket, it made the torque levels of the impact go down by a full 25%. So now you've seen the gray pneumatic mid-length impact socket set for yourself. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, this particular one is a 3/8 inch metric version, but they also carry a standard version just depending on the size sockets that you use. Now, I do want to point out my favorite feature by far is the fact that they do not skip any sizes, and it goes from 7mm to 19mm with none missing. Now, that's a big deal, and it's also my #1 complaint with other socket sets. When you have one or two sizes just missing for no reason, when you go to work on something, it always ends up being the one or two that you're looking for. Now, I do want to point out also that these do carry a lifetime warranty against manufacturer defects. So if you do have a problem with them and it's not an abuse situation, Gray Pneumatic will replace them for you free of charge. If you like this video, please click like. If you like my channel, please click subscribe. And thanks for watching.